All right, welcome. Today we are diving headfirst into the ancient world of Jewish law to crack a really fascinating case from a single page of the Talmud. We're going to see how these ancient rabbis used pure, razor-sharp logic to tackle a huge question about the power of a single thought. And it all boils down to this one central question. Can a single, fleeting, improper thought in a priest's mind actually be powerful enough to invalidate an entire sacred offering? We're talking about a ritual in the ancient Temple of Jerusalem, and you know what? The answer is so much more complex and frankly a lot cooler than you might think.
So, the key idea we need to wrap our heads around is what the Talmud calls prohibited intent. Just picture a priest right in the middle of a holy ritual. If, during that ceremony, he has a thought like, I'm going to eat this offering tomorrow instead of today, or he intends for it to be used outside the sacred area, well, that one little thought could have massive consequences.
Okay, so to really get this case, we first need to lay out the basic law of the land. And, like any good mystery, it all starts with a simple rule and a really, really important exception. Here's where we find the real tension in this whole puzzle. On one hand, the great sage Rabbi Shimon lays down a general rule. If a priest has one of these prohibited thoughts during a part of the ritual that's kind of skippable, then no big deal, the offering is still good. But, and this is a huge but, he makes a critical exception for these special inner sin offerings. For those, that same thought during that same action absolutely does spoil the entire ritual. So what's the deal? Why the difference?
The logic all comes down to one single word: indispensable. See, for these specific offerings, the slaughter has to happen outside, in the courtyard, but the sprinkling of the blood has to happen inside the holy sanctuary. So that means the act of physically carrying the blood from point A to point B isn't just some optional step you can skip. It's a fundamental, non-negotiable part of the service. And when an action becomes indispensable, the intention behind it suddenly matters a whole lot more.
Okay, this is where the plot really thickens, because the exception we just figured out seems to create a massive logical contradiction with another one of Rabbi Shimon's very own rulings.
So here's the puzzle the rabbis were staring at. The absolute worst, most severe penalty for a prohibited thought is something called pigul, and it carries a heavy spiritual punishment. Now, Rabbi Shimon says that this penalty, pigul, doesn't even apply to these inner sin offerings. So wait a minute. If the worst-case scenario is completely off the table, how can a lesser thought still be powerful enough to invalidate the whole offering? It doesn't add up. It feels totally illogical.
So you see the problem, right? Rabbi Shimon seems to be saying two things that completely contradict each other. On one hand, a wrong thought spoils the offering. On the other hand, the very law that governs this kind of penalty, the law of pickle, doesn't apply. For the rabbis of the Talmud, a logical inconsistency like this just cannot stand. It absolutely must be resolved. And to fix it, they open up their logical toolkit. And this is where we get to see the sheer brilliance, the systematic way these Talmudic sages approached problem solving, using these established, powerful methods of reasoning. The first tool they pull out is called a kal v'chomer. Now, it sounds fancy, but it's a very intuitive idea you probably use all the time. It's a light and heavy argument. It's simple, really. If a rule applies in an easy case, it must certainly apply in a more difficult or stricter case. The modern analogy here is perfect. If parking is forbidden on a regular Tuesday, it's definitely, for sure, forbidden on a major holiday. Makes sense, right? So using this tool, Rabbi Yosai just brilliantly cracks the first part of the case. He compares a regular, more lenient peace offering to the stricter sin offering we're dealing with. He points out that for the lenient one, a thought about the wrong purpose is fine, but a thought about the wrong time invalidates it. Then he looks at the stricter sin offering, where even a thought about the wrong purpose makes it invalid. So he argues, if a thought about wrong time spoils the easy case, it must absolutely surely spoil the harder one. The logic is airtight, even without needing that pigul penalty. But wait, that only solves the problem for a thought about the wrong time. What about a thought about the wrong place? Well, for that, the rabbis turn to their next clue, a specific verse in the Bible. And you have to notice the two key terms here, third day and pigul. The rabbis see these as coded instructions. And this brings us to their second logical tool, hakesh, which is basically textual juxtaposition. The idea here is that nothing in the sacred text is an accident. So if two concepts are placed side by side, it's a huge signal that they're legally linked, that they share the same set of rules, even if on the surface they seem totally unrelated. So they break down the verse.
Third day pretty clearly refers to an issue of wrong time. But they argue that the word pigul, which seems kind of extra, is actually a textual hook that refers to the other major category of invalidating thought, wrong place. And since the text puts these two ideas right next to each other, boom, the law for one must apply to the other. So, just as a thought about wrong time invalidates the offering, so too does a thought about wrong place. And just like that, the contradiction is fully resolved. But the analysis doesn't stop there. Just when you think the case is closed, this is where it gets truly mind-bending. The master logician, Rava, enters the scene, and he pushes the logic to its absolute limit, asking, what part of this action is really, truly indispensable? Rava basically acts like a master detective here, re-examining all the evidence. He's not satisfied with just knowing that the act of conveying is where intention matters. No, he pushes further. He demands absolute precision. He wants to isolate the exact physical space, the single moment in time, where a thought actually gains the power to alter reality. And to find it, he starts layering in other seemingly unrelated legal opinions. His first move is just brilliant. He questions the path itself. He says, well, what if the slaughter could happen closer to the sanctuary? He finds an opinion that allows it right at the doorway. Now think about what that means. If the priest is already at the door, then that long walk across the courtyard is no longer indispensable. And just like that, the entire path is neutralized. The danger zone for a stray thought shrinks from a whole journey down to a single threshold. But Rava is not done. He pushes the logic even further. He cites another case, this one about frankincense, and he asks, what if the offering table itself could be placed in the doorway? I mean, if that's legally possible, then the priest doesn't even need to step through the doorway. The indispensable action is no longer a walk, it's not even a single step. The zone of power just gets smaller and smaller. And here, after peeling back every single layer of the action, we get to this breathtaking conclusion. Ravella reduces the entire journey, the entire act of conveying, to its absolute irreducible minimum. The only truly indispensable part of the process is the single moment the priest stretches his hand over the threshold. One gesture. In that single fleeting motion, and only in that moment, does a thought have the power to change reality. So, wow, what is the takeaway from this incredible intellectual exercise? Let's zoom out from all the specifics and look at the bigger picture that this ancient puzzle reveals about thought, logic, and what it all means. You see, this isn't just some obscure legal debate. It shows us that Talmudic reasoning is a living, breathing system that's just obsessed with precision and truth. It uses logical tools, like those a fortiori arguments, that are just as valid today as they were thousands of years ago. And most profoundly, it shows a belief in this unbreakable link between our physical actions and our inner thoughts. It's really a testament to our very human need to build these complex, beautiful systems just to make sense of the world. And that leaves us with a final thought to take away from all this. The rabbis of the Talmud believed that a single thought in a single moment could literally alter physical reality. So if intention was that powerful then, what kind of power does it truly hold in our own actions, our relationships, and our world today?